Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Soul-u-tions podcast. In this episode, we're going to talk about the brilliance behind an idea that we practice in the Soul-u-tions labs called Gentle January. And it's a different way to do your start of the new year. And it is a way that gives you the permission to take luxurious amounts of time in thinking through your new year, not just like coming up with an idea and getting straight into action mode, but thinking through your new year in a way that reflects back on the previous year, that builds on your strengths, and that really questions what might get in my way. And if you think, I don't know if I have time to do all of this, Tara, take a listen to this podcast, because it's the same approach that Navy SEALs use when they are preparing for their year ahead. So, if the Navy SEALs can take a little bit of extra time out of their new year to really think through these things, my guess is so can you. I'll see you on the other side of the introduction.
Einstein said, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them." Most everyone in the world is solving their problems the wrong way. Our problems come from our thinking, and we can solve them with our thinking. So, whether you're at your lowest, just trying to grow, or whether you are trying to sustain growth over your lifetime, join us as we push the boundaries of our current thinking and redefine how we find Soul-u-tions.
The hope and the strength and the love and the smiles and the laughter of friends and family. Add it up, you'll find no limit to the possibilities.
So, in the introduction, how it says that Einstein says that most people are solving their problems from the wrong perspective, angle, thought process. What does that really mean? Well, what it means is that when you are thinking that something is a problem and that it has to be changed, and you dive straight into problem-solving mode without doing this one thing that we do every January in the Soul-u-tions labs. And it just so happens I was listening to a podcast this week with Tim Ferriss and Greg McKeown, who is the author of Essentialism and Effortless, and he is a well sought after corporate speaker, and he was sharing how he does this training every year with high-level generals and the Navy SEALs. So it's this idea of truly questioning whether the things that we think are problems, and thinking about what are driving what are the things that I'm checking my grammar here? What are the things that are driving us into thinking and to believing that something is the problem? Really, and he uses the term prosecute. He's British. So for us, that would just be questioning. That would be what we would call it, right? But I love the word prosecute because it brings up my legal background and legal training, which does involve seriously taking a problem and questioning it to the extent that a prosecutor would question it, right? Truly prosecute it. Is that really a problem? What is the thing that needs to be solved here? Is it that thing, or is it something else? And what Greg says that we find, and I just can tell you after coaching for 12 years and leading weekly classes in the Soul-Shine Labs for 12 years, I couldn't agree with him more. That it is this idea of really saying, is that true? Is that true? Is that thing that I think is a problem? Like, is that true? Is it truly a problem? And he said, and I forget the author of this book, but I'll look it up and put it in the show notes for you, give it to Charles to put it in the show notes, that what happens to people, what happens to communities, what happens to civilizations is that they begin to complicate things so much that their systems become so complicated that the reason why things fail is because they complicate it to such a degree that there are no more resources to put behind and into the solutions that you think you need. Like, if you develop these complex systems and you think a problem is super complicated to solve, think about it. You've got to attack that problem in order to solve it with all of your resources, right? It has to have a complicated solution. And so this is why I call this the Soul-u-tions podcast, and why I lead in every podcast with a reminder to you that we have to take the time to stop, look, and listen, evaluate, and see if that thing that we think is a problem, right? Take the time to stop, to look at it, to actually write it down on paper, and to listen to what is the thinking that's driving us to believe that that is a problem in the first place, and then to evaluate it, to truly question it. Is this truly the problem, or is something else at work here? Okay, perfect example. And this is one of the things that I am hearing over and over and over at the beginning of the year, especially with women who are mothers and working and have children, houses to run, holidays to pack back up the decorations in the house to recover from, and to get everybody back into this new routine. The thing that I am hearing over and over is, number one, exhausted from all the doing. Number two, why can't they help more? Why can't they just see what has to be done and help me do it? And in particular, this comes up with holiday decorations. And it is such a simple thing. And it sounds like the problem is that I'm the only one. Listen to this. It sounds like the problem is I am the only one who can do it right. I am the only one who sees all the things. I am the only one who, when I go to clean up from the holidays, who doesn't leave anything out, right? Who doesn't miss a pillow that says, "It's the season for believing," who can cull the things that need to be culled, who can organize things in a way that you are thinking not just about putting it up, but you're thinking about next year when you're going to be getting it out and putting it back out again. Why can't anyone else seem to do this? So the problem seems to be that other person doesn't know how to do it, doesn't care, isn't bothered by it, doesn't see that you are struggling with it. But when you take a moment to stop, look, and listen to what the real problem is? The real problem is what? Just take a moment. I want you to put your hand over your heart, close your eyes unless you're driving, and just take a moment. It's like, what is underneath all of the frustration? What came up for you in that moment? Like, why are you frustrated? My guess is the first thing that came up, because this is what is coming up for my clients. You're tired. And when we're tired, we tend to get frustrated. So before we jump into problem-solving mode with a tired mind and a feeling of frustration, we need to stop, allow ourselves to rest, give ourselves a moment. Now, this doesn't mean you need to book a ticket and go to the Bahamas for a week in order to recoup, although that would be lovely. No, it just means like for a moment today, maybe you could just take a breath, to give yourself an extra moment to have a cup of tea, to read a book, to take a walk around the block before you jump into the next thing, or even ask for some help. This is what Gentle January is all about. Gentle January is about incorporating the time and space on an annual basis in a year, which you say, I need a little recovery time. I need to take it slow. I'm going to be gentle with myself, where you recognize all of the things that you have done in order to keep all the things going in the previous year. And I was looking back and preparing for today's podcast. So we have a library in the Soul-u-tions Labs where it's organized by month, theme, and then in every month you have this little tab and it breaks down to the classes that were in the month. I could go back all the way to 2019 and look at all the Gentle January recordings that we have done. I mean, seriously, this is the 6th year of doing Gentle January. And so I say that because I want you to know how much evidence that this is like a true, laboratory. It's almost like when I named it the Soul-u-tions Labs, like I really knew what I was doing. No, I really did. I really intentionally wanted this to be a laboratory where we could try an idea out and see if it worked. And in 2019 was the first year we tried out this idea of Gentle January. And there were 20 women in the group at that time. And the interesting thing is that it was so impactful into our year of creating the things that we want, creating a life that we love. It was so impactful that it has become a staple and an annual tradition. And what I love about it is even when people roll out of the Soul-u-tions Labs, people are still connected to the skill sets that they learn and the traditions that they learn. Like I received a message on Instagram just this week from one of our Soul-u-tions Labs members who was in that first class of Gentle January. And she was in the labs for 5 years and just recently stepped out to take a break. But she sent me a message and it had a meme in it that she had seen on Instagram. And she said, Gentle January forever. And that made me feel so good because what it does is it affirms and validates that as women and men, listen, this is for everybody, right? I'm just going to use the female pronoun here, but because, I think a lot of men are Navy SEALs still. And Greg McEwen certainly is a man too. But taking the time and setting the time at the beginning of the year to have an annual time to stop, look, and listen, and to allow yourself to rest and recover. Because back to that Einstein quote, right? You can't solve a problem on the same level of thinking that created it. So many of the things that are problems to us are created from a tired mind, an exhausted state of being. And so if you are trying to solve a problem that is caused by exhaustion with an exhausted mind, you are so overcomplicating the solution. Because so often when we take the time to rest and we check in with ourselves, the problem created by exhaustion goes away because you are refreshed. You are rested. And just really think about it. If you had like this little A/B testing here, where you're like, okay, so I'm going to test this theory of Tara's. One is going to be, I'm not going to rest. I'm not going to slow down in January. I'm just going to plug along. And every problem that I come into contact with, I am going to solve it with an exhausted mind and throw all of my frustration into solving that problem. What kind of result are you going to get? You're going to get more frustrated, more and more frustrated. Just think about it. You're throwing the energy of frustration into solving the problem, which already is like, I'm thinking about this, like, this should have been done already. Why aren't, we're going to stick with the Christmas things. Why aren't all these things up? Why? You're going to find the pillow that says 'tis the reason for the season or believe, and you're going to go, I knew it, right? Everything that you do is just going to increase your level of frustration until you take the time to stop, look, and listen and evaluate what is really going on. I think over half the problem here is I'm just tired. And when we're tired, like these are the questions I always ask myself when I'm frustrated. Am I tired? Am I hungry? Those two questions, like so often can solve, I would think, at least 50% of our problems. Truly, am I tired? Am I hungry? Think about it. You've got a hangry person in your family and they are just raging. I've got someone like that in my family and we all like, oh, he's totally hangry. The problems when he's like thinking about everything and his level of frustration is at a 10 plus on a scale of 1 to 10. And the rest of us have trained ourselves and our nervous systems to, if he can't stop, look, and listen, we can stop, look, and listen and say, he needs a sandwich. He needs a break. And we don't need to jump into like his chaotic, frustrated environment. We know that once he has a sandwich, that he's going to come back to us and he's going to say, I'm really sorry. I hadn't eaten all day. And now we can come back and say, was that actually really a problem? And most of the time, it really wasn't a problem. It was just something that seemed like a problem because we're frustrated. So in Gentle January, we do take the time to say proactively, Like, we are tired and we have been doing a lot. And so we're going to take the time to rest, to refuel, to take things slowly before we jump into all of this new year, new you, so that when we are thinking through the year, we're not doing it from an exhausted and a frustrated mind. And so just by having this bookmarked, this entire month bookmarked as quote unquote gentle, and truly calling it that gentle January, we're just reinforcing like, oh, this is the month that we take things a little slower. And we have pre-planned it that way, right? We're like, yes, we're going to take things slower. Okay. So when we take things slower, right, we are opening the space now to look at the new year and look at always what worked before. We always look at that first, right? That's our 25-5-3 rule. You have that masterclass. If you don't, get on my TaraSimkins.com and sign up for it. It's like a game changer. We start with what's working. And that also is a way to help intentionally recharge ourselves, right? Because when you're exhausted, when you're depleted, you see things that aren't working. Like your brain is just looking, scanning for things that aren't working more than things that are working. And so you have to take control of the wheel, right? You, the bigger you, the you that is like the big observer, right? Your soul, your bigger part of you has to take the wheel from the part of you that is just seeing everything that isn't working. And so part of rejuvenating ourselves is this reminder, this remembering of all the things that you have done and that you do, like all the things, and not just have done and do, like checking them off the list, but truly giving yourself the credit for having co-created, right? You have co-created the life that you have right now. I mean, it is an amazing thing that you have done, truly, even if you're not exactly where you want to be right now. But to think about all the things that you have faced, all the things that you have come through. Now, why is this so important at the beginning of the year? Well, it's so important because when you don't stop, take the time to really look through and think through the year that you want, you don't give yourself time to anticipate some of the things that might get in your way. But when you start by reviewing the previous year and like filling your emotional bank account with all these deposits of resilience and just examples of how you faced in the previous year the things that were unexpected, how you worked through them, how you came through them stronger. I'm thinking of a particular client right now, and she has a small business. Her husband has a small business, and they have 4 small children and an adult child. And in the summer, he had this freak accident where he went to grab a toy that a kid had thrown up into the ceiling fan, and he stepped on a side table on the patio, and his leg went through it, and it absolutely lacerated his leg. And that was July. And now I remember at the time I was like, this is a catastrophic injury and it is going to take a minimum of 6 months to overcome this injury. How are you going to reorganize your life to accommodate for this injury and still get the kids to school, still run your business, still pack the lunches, right? Still deal with dinner time and bath time and all of those crazy, hectic things. And so I told her, at the time, I said, I want you to get a really big calendar. And I want you to circle 6 months from today, from the day of the accident. I want you to circle the date 6 months from now. And I want you to cross out every day that you live through between now and then. Like you're one day closer to being at that healed point, and you have one more day worth of getting through life at the same time and facing your challenges. And I got a text from her last week, and it was her big calendar. And she said, I made it. I made it. Now, do you see what I'm getting at here? When you begin your new year, when you take a gentle January and give yourself this month, luxurious amount of time to reflect back on all the things that you were able to do in the previous year, you see how much gas you're putting in your tank to start the new year off with? You really are just like filling yourself with this feeling of, I did that. I can do anything. And so when you start to then move forward to say, okay, now what did I learn from last year? I learned that I could do hard things at a level I never imagined. I have these goals for this year. I sure am hopeful that it's going to be a smooth sailing year. But if not, I know that I can face things. And then you can ask yourself this question, not from a place of fear, but from a place of having already met like crazy obstacles from the previous year. You can say, okay, what might get in my way here? And you can anticipate things like someone might get sick. There might be a family health issue. You don't have to go into detail here, but you can just say that would be something that would slow me down. And I think that people are really afraid of saying that because there's this kind of magical thinking that gets manifestation stuff wrong, which is, oh, then I'm going to be thinking into existence someone in my family being sick. No, you really don't have that much power in the world. But what you're doing is you're being back to Greg McKeown, and the author of Essentialism, says it's being strategically pessimistic. And he says, he's like, in going through these exercises, with the Navy SEALs, he asked them that question. He's like, this is the fourth question in the, what went right last year? What did I overcome? What are the new things that we want to do this year, right? The fourth question is, what might get in the way? And if you don't slow down, right? If you don't take time to stop, look, listen, and evaluate, if you don't give yourself more than New Year's Day or the week between Christmas and New Year's, my favorite week of the year, if you don't give yourself more time to think through these things, then when something happens, which it will, because we live in a world where things happen, we're not in control of all the things, you're going to be derailed versus having pre-planned for an obstacle, it doesn't matter what it was you planned for. But as long as you planned for something, right? Oh, a health thing. Then no matter what it is, you can recall what that plan is and just adapt the plan for the other thing. That was a lot. I'm a big exhale. You can tell we've come to the end of the podcast. I hope that I have sold you on the idea of Gentle January. I hope that you will begin to incorporate this into your life for the rest of your life. This is like so many things that I teach in the Soul-u-tions Labs. It is meant to be something that just is like a deposit that earns compound interest. So Gentle January actually earns compound interest in the month of January through the year. But as that Soul-u-tions Lab former member who texted me last week or DM'd me on Instagram, it will take you for the rest of your life. And then you could just, pat yourself on the back and say, I'm kind of, I handle my New Year's resolutions just like a Navy SEAL. Because you do. All right, my friends, I hope that you loved today's podcast. And if you did, there are two things I would like to ask for you to do for me. One, would you please rate and review this podcast? It means the world to me if you could just say, I liked it. She's great. It actually helps the algorithms, like, what is the word I'm thinking of, Charles? Recommend it. It actually helps them say, oh, this person liked it, and maybe other people will like it. So it helps spread the love. It's like a random act of kindness you could do for me. And the other thing that would just be a huge, just would mean the world to me is if you would just share this with one friend. Share this podcast with one friend. And when you share it with them, I want you to say this. Tell that friend how much they mean to you. Tell that friend that you see them and that you saw them through the last year, like really grow, meet some challenges that you just thought, wow, how they handled it, how they met what life threw them, that you're so impressed by that and that you saw them. We've said this before, and actually Jane Fonda just went on CBS Sunday Morning and said this, reminding everybody, the thing that adds 7.5 years to your life is not your diet. It's not the amount of sleep you get. It's not the exercise. It's the quality of your relationships. And by sharing this podcast with one person and telling them why, which is that you see them, you're making a deposit into that friendship bank account that is the thing that extends our lives more than anything. And hey, what else are we on this earth to do if not to love one another and think about one another? So those are my requests for you today. Until next time, my friends, have a great one.
'Cause I ain't done living the life I meant to lead. And I ain't done loving the ones who cared for me. The hope and the strength and the love and the smile